Good afternoon, my name's Graham Jones. I'm this afternoon leading a workshop on preaching Ruth. And my task is really quite a simple one because the material that Rachel Starr has produced is really wonderful, rich material. It's a preacher's dream really. There's so much material to work with, so many resources to access. So really the purpose of the workshop will be to encourage people to engage with this material that Rachel has produced. I'm going to encourage that by really stressing the importance of staying with the story. I think there's a temptation for a lot of preachers to read a text and then think they're not inspired by it, so they go off and preach their usual sermon. And what I'm going to encourage the group to do is to really stay with the story and stay with the characters and the plot and the material that Rachel has produced will really facilitate that and really encourage us to stay with the story. And then once we've explored that as a way of working, we're going to really just focus on one of the chapters that Rachel has produced, chapter 3, which she entitles The Story of Ruth. So we will read the chapter and then I'm going to divide the group into 5 groups so that they can work on the material. And in each chapter, Rachel has produced very helpfully 4 preaching points and also 3 headings. So one group will look at the 3 headings, which will, and I'm going to ask them to explore whether that would form the 3 headings of a sermon. Lots of people like to have 3 points and 3 headings to their sermons. So again, a gift to many preachers. So one small group will explore that. And then the other 4 groups will explore the 4 different preaching points that Rachel has highlighted in chapter 3. And then once they've spent some time doing that in small groups, we will come back together in plenary and hopefully people can share some of the ideas they've had about how they might try and unpack some of those themes, some of those preaching points, some of the ideas they've shared together, and so that the whole group can take some notes, take some inspiration, take some ideas away with them. It will be very brief because it's quite a short workshop, but hopefully it will encourage them in a process, the process of staying with the story and staying with the biblical text and with the material that Rachel has produced, and also will have given them some ideas and will have got their creative juices flowing so that they can go away and hopefully through that inspiration that will help them in their preparation for when they're preaching. Maybe not necessarily on that chapter or on that week, but the process will have inspired them and given them ideas so that when Bible month happens in their context, they will have already begun that process and will be inspired to stay in the story and to make connections between the story and their context and their church. So that's my hope for the workshop, and I'm looking forward to facilitating that this afternoon.
Hello, I'm Tim Baker and I'm the editor of the Vine resources, which are materials available for churches to use in their local arrangements or indeed as inspiration for worship at any time. The Vine follows the lectionary every year, but part of what I'm bringing here to a Bible Month workshop is a reflection on how we might use Bible Month and how we might use Ruth in our local arrangement worship. So those times when there isn't a preacher on the plan and we're organising worship ourselves as a church, how can we engage with Ruth in an interesting and engaging way? And one of the things we'll look at in the workshop is this idea that maybe Ruth is book for local arrangements, a book for the times when the people who aren't normally in charge of the story get to take over the story. So in Ruth, this Moabite comes from outside of Judah and comes into the heart of the story, and suddenly the story seems to be about her. The outsider gains control. Maybe that's what's happening at local arrangements around the country, when those of us who don't usually speak in a pulpit, don't usually lead worship, suddenly find ourselves with an opportunity to shape the story. So what we'll do in the workshop is just think a little bit about 4 ways that we might engage with Ruth and with Bible Month as in a local arrangement service. So those 4 ways are: 1, we might want to do a very traditional kind of hymn sandwich type service, and we'll look at how you might adapt the Bible Month resources to enable you to do that, to enable you to just walk through 5 hymns, a couple of readings, reflections on the readings, and that sort of thing. But then we'll also look at 3 other ways where we might just engage with the text in a slightly broader sense. The thing that really excites me about worship, and the reason I'm involved in the Vine, is that we're passionate about worship being the thing that really moves us. Worship touching us where we need to be inspired and uplifted. And I sometimes think that maybe traditional worship doesn't always do that for all of us. So those other 3 ways we might do it are through exploring the themes more broadly. So it might be, instead of following a structure, let's think, what are the themes that are coming out through Ruth? What are the themes of this story? And how might those themes speak to us and our lives today? How might we use those themes to inspire our discipleship? The second way in is more about questions. So it might be that maybe your local arrangement is a chance for you to abandon the script and to turn to a time of more discussion. Maybe that's something that already happens in your church. Maybe that's a completely alien concept. But maybe the idea of a local arrangement just gives you the chance to explore some of those questions together. So there's brilliant questions as well in the Bible Month resources. Can we use those questions to help us start great discussions in our church? And then the final one we'll explore today is just kind of opening that right up, saying, what if there was just a blank sheet of paper before you when you started preparing worship? What if we brought none of our preconceptions, none of our ideas about this is how worship should be, and then just explored what emerges there? It's part of the kind of privilege of my life to be a member of a church where we regularly do that. Once a month we just have worship that is blank sheet of paper worship, and so we'll explore a little bit about what that might look like in Ruth. That might mean you're using Beethoven, it might mean you're using Bob Marley, but there's lots of different ways into Ruth that maybe allow us to explore some of those brilliant stories, some of those brilliant questions, some of those really interesting themes.